Okay, first of all, is it distracting that I'm wearing glasses and my owl is wearing glasses? Is that distracting? Hey there, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Megan and I am talking about my birth story today. So I would love it if you took an interest in my content and checked out my blog. I run a blog called thejourneyofless.com and you can find it at shocker, thejourneyofless.com. And I blog about motherhood, health, family, home, and like some other subjects like, you know, money and like, I don't know, beauty, health, nutrition, that kind of thing, like whatever strikes my fancy. But I write and I also do the YouTube. Anyway, so I would love it if you went over and checked out my content. The other thing that I would really love for you to do is hit the subscribe button. I have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers in 2019 and your support would greatly help me reach that goal. Okay, so I'll start with pregnancy. There's like not a lot to report here. Pregnancy was pretty miserable for me. I did not love being pregnant. I kind of feel like people who say that they love being pregnant are lying, although, you know, I can only like speak from my own experience. So it's possible that some women just genuinely love motherhood. I can appreciate loving the idea of motherhood and just like respecting and like appreciating everything that your body is going and growing through. But like the actual physical symptoms of pregnancy are hard. Like there's, you know, the sickness part, which is not, I'm not going to call it morning sickness because that's like not accurate whatsoever. It is just like sickness during the first trimester if you're lucky, but for some women it extends on even further. The like shifting of all your internal contents inside of you, that's incredibly uncomfortable. At one point I felt like my rib cage was being like the concept of like a vice grip, except the opposite, like from the inside. I genuinely felt like my rib cage was being like pressed on from the inside. It was incredibly painful. In my third trimester especially, not being able to eat like barely at all, not being able to like get a full breath, the heartburn that kept me up at night. Like I thought before I was pregnant that I knew what heartburn was. I had no concept. There is no heartburn like pregnancy heartburn, or maybe there is. Again, I can only speak from my personal experience, but like that alone is enough to like make me really question, like, do I really want another kid? I do, with every ounce of my being, but like, God, I would give anything to not experience that heartburn again. It was the worst and it kept me up. I was like sleeping vertically. Anyway, I'm really digressing here, and I said I was like not gonna like get too much into the pregnancy aspect of it in this video, but anyway, pregnancy was hard. Like it was hard. So fast forward, my original due date was like April, I don't know, something 13th maybe, or 12th. I don't know. It was something. Yeah. And, you know, we came right up to it, and I, kind of like coming into like the home stretch, the last trimester, coming into like those last few weeks, I really hadn't like dropped. So I kind of like knew like, okay, this baby could potentially go like longer than term because he just hadn't dropped. And I at the time didn't realize, and I felt like, oh yeah, like he's right there. It's gonna happen like any day. And then other women, especially like older women who have been around the block, you know, were looking at my belly and they're like, oh no, honey, like you have a ways to drop. And if I can find some pictures, I'll insert them like throughout this story. But yeah, I felt like I was ready to go. People were like, no, you're not ready to go. So I worked right up until, like I work a full-time job. I worked right up until D-Day. And my job at that time, I'm gonna keep it really real. Like pregnancy was hard in a physical like way, but it was also hard in like a mental and emotional way. And especially from the aspect of like, you know, I just felt like I had this brain fog all the time. So take that and couple it with the fact that like I have a full-time job and responsibilities. Like I have my project that I am responsible for contributing to on the daily. Like those responsibilities don't stop. I had been like back briefing a guy that was going to take over my project while I was out. but he was busy too. So it was just like kind of a perfect storm, everything coming together. And basically, to like fast forward and bring this like all into relevance, so the week that I was due, so my original due date was like sometime in April, but at some point, I think it was April 13th, but at some point during my pregnancy, the doctor made a note that like I was measuring a little bit large, so he like moved the due date up. So my child was actually born on his actual due date. So I guess it must have been, he was born April 19th, so it must have been April 19th that they had said, oh, I remember. His original due date was April 26th, but then the doctor had moved his due date to April 19th, and like I never knew that. So the whole time I thought I was due April 26th, and then like way late in the game I found out like, oh, your due date's actually April 19th. So anyway, it was like April, whatever the Tuesday before that was, it must have been the 16th. So let's see, 19th, 18th, 17th. Yeah, must have been 17th of April. So I got up in the morning, and sometimes I would get up. My husband works in DC, and if you like know anything about Northern Virginia traffic, it's like garbage. He goes to work, he leaves the house at 5 a.m. and the reason for that is so he can be in the office at 6, and he has a very like short commute in like the construct of a DC commute. His commute is only 30 minutes to get about 30 miles, but he's got to go to the slug lot and pick up a bus or slug in. So sometimes I would get up early with him and drive him into the city. We would go to Starbucks and just drive in together, just him and I, before the roads got bad. And that was like our way of just like spending time together. And it kind of like kept occurring to me in this last week of pregnancy, like, you know, I should get up and take Mitch to work, because once there's a baby, I'm not going to be able to do this, because like I'm not going to load the baby in the car to like, you know, take him into DC. So just in an effort to like spend one last like morning together, like on a commute, I got up. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was like, I'm going to take you to work. He was like, awesome, that would be amazing. We stopped and got coffee. Right over here near the house, there's a Starbucks. So we stopped and got coffee, and then we kind of went the back roads to get on the interstate to head into DC. And along the way, we noticed that there was this cab driver, and he was like driving in the right-hand lane, like super slow. Like the speed limit on the road was like around 55, I think, and he was doing like 30. We're like, okay, dude, like that's erratic. And he was like not right in the lanes. He was kind of like just erratically driving. So I said, and I was driving and we were in the truck, I said, oh, like I'm gonna get around this cab because this guy is like not paying any attention to what he's doing. And then I think I made another comment about how cab drivers in general are just like bad drivers. Anyway, so we drove around him, and as we passed him, we see the guy's on his phone. Like, okay, dude, like you be safe over there because it's not just you out here on the road. Anyway, drive past him, come to a light about a mile up the road. That is the last light before we actually merge onto the interstate. And we're sitting at this red light, waiting for the light to turn. And I happen to glance up into the rear view mirror and notice this cab, same cab, is coming in hot behind me. Like he is going probably 30 or 35 miles an hour, and he's right there behind me. And in just a moment of like, ugh, I say to him, or I say out loud to Mitch, oh, we're gonna get hit. And boom, like right as soon as I said it, this guy, right at the last second, he tried to veer out of our lane into the right lane, because we were in the left lane, getting, you know, to make a left-hand merge onto the interstate, and he tried to veer right last minute into the right lane. So we definitely got rear-ended, but because he like veered off at the last second, praise the Lord, well, praise the Lord or not, depending on how you look at it, Mitch in the passenger seat took the bulk of the impact of that collision. And you know, I say praise the Lord because I'm 9 months pregnant. If I had taken the bulk of the impact, if I had been in the passenger seat and Mitch had been driving, I don't know, I might not like have like a kid today. Like you just don't know. So we are like, oh my gosh, you know, immediately in that moment, we take like an assessment of the situation. Mitch is like, are you okay? And I'm in shock, but I'm like, I think I'm okay. He's like, he's quite visibly like, he got jolted in like a whiplash situation. So he's like, I'm really stiff, but like, let's just get off the roadway and make sure you're okay. So we pull off. Crazy, there's like a road to a hospital right there. We pull off down this road and the taxi pulls off the roadway behind us, and like we got hit from behind. The car is definitely still drivable. His car is technically still drivable, but like it's questionable. He's got like a fender like out of alignment, and like his hood is like that. It's just, he's like in way worse shape than we are. So we get pulled off. We get out of the car. It's pitch black. It's like 5:45 in the morning at this point. And this guy does not speak any English. I don't know like why. I don't want to like speculate as to his country of origin, but he's Asian. He speaks like, if he spoke English, he did not make that known at that point. And we got out our insurance card, our driver's license. Mitch and I are just speaking to each other about like, are you okay? And I'm like, you know, I think I'm fine. He's like, do we need to call like the police? Do we need to call an ambulance? And I'm just like, I'm shaking, I'm rattled, but I'm like, you know, I think I'm okay. Like, I don't feel any pain. I think I'm okay. So we exchanged insurance information and driver's license and all that with this cab driver. His car is like, in my opinion, his car was not drivable. In fact, he was over trying to like jam his fender out of the way of his tire so that he could drive his car, because his fender had like jammed into his tire. Anyway, I'm really making this story more about the wreck than the birth, but there's a reason behind it. So we call 911 and we're like, hey, we've been in a collision. The guy rear-ended us. I think that we're fine. Do we need to have a police officer here? Like, there's no injuries. What do we need to do? And the 911 dispatcher told us, if you've exchanged information and there's no injuries, you're actually clear to go. You don't have to have a police officer come. If you'd like one, I can send one, but you're not required to have one. So, you know, it's like 5:45 in the morning. Mitch needs to be at work in like 15 minutes. We're like halfway there. We're like, you know, I think we're good. I'm just gonna go ahead and take you on to work. I don't think we need a police officer. So we all agreed that that was like how we were gonna proceed. I think everything's fine. I take Mitch on to work. The truck, the back like quarter panel is all like, you know, jazzed up, but everything's fine. It's drivable. So I take him on to work and he is like, listen, call the doctor's office, go in and get checked out this morning. And I'm like, oh, I think I'm fine. And in my mind, I was like, I'm not, everything's fine. And he's like, listen, just do me this favor. Just please go get checked out this morning. And in my mind, all I could think about was, I'm due this week. Like, I don't have time to mess with this. Like, I gotta go and get logged in and like get my work done. Like, I gotta get like my project to like a point of transition. Like, I'm not ready. Like, I have stuff that needs to be done before I can pass this work on to the next guy. Like, I'm stressed in my mind and I'm like, I don't need this extra stress right now. I'm not going to the doctor, but I told him, yeah, like, I'll go in, get everything checked out. And I had no intention of doing it. So I get home, the doctor's office opens at like 7 or something. He's like texting me the whole time, like, did you call yet? And I'm like, no, I'll call when they open. So finally it's like 7:30 rolls around and he's like, call. So I'm like, okay, I call. I'm like, hey, I just need to talk to a nurse. Nurse gets on the line, like, hey, I was in a car accident. You were what? I was in a car accident. Everything's fine. Like, I'm due this week, but like, everything's fine. I need the peace of mind of knowing that like, I don't need to come in. Everything's fine. And the nurse is like, you need to go to the ER. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Everything's fine. And she's like, no, you need to go to the ER. You can't assess the situation. There could be something going on that you're not aware of. And I'm like, okay, let's bring it down a notch. everything's fine. Like, I just kept trying to like convince her everything's fine, and she would not take no for an answer. So I said, listen, I'm not going to the ER. It's like not happening. That's like, we're not there. We're like on different pages about like my physical state. So I say, is it possible for me to just come in and get checked out? You know, like everything's fine, but like my husband is just, he's being adamant. And she's like, listen, I'm telling you that you need to go to the ER, but short of that, please come in and get checked out. Come in right now. So that's what I did. I like came in, they made space for me to see the doctor. I think I was there by like 8 a.m. I get there, the doctor's pretty chill. I'd never seen this doctor before, but she's like so chill. At that doctor's office, you see like different physicians, but it was, you know, they're all good. It was totally chill. The nurse took my blood pressure before the doctor came in, and then she took it again just to be like safe, like, you know, oh, like, well, I need you to uncross your legs, just take a few deep breaths. I'm just gonna take this again. I didn't get a good reading the first time. So she takes it again, like, okay, well, the doctor will be in a few minutes. She comes in, the doctor's like, she's on my level. Like, I didn't have a direct blow to the stomach, so she's like, there's very little chance that like anything's actually wrong with the baby. The baby's heartbeat was fine. He was like moving around. Everything was good. We were like in a good place. So before she leaves, she says, you know, I think everything's fine. I'm just gonna have the nurse come back in and check your blood pressure one more time. I don't know if her machine wasn't working, but she just wasn't getting a good reading. And I love how they like kind of like low key like played this down. So the nurse came back in, got another reading, and she's like, listen, your blood pressures are a little bit high. I need you to just go in the lobby and just relax, get some water. She's like, there's no problem, but just like get some water, you know, like take some deep breaths. Like, you're probably just rattled from the accident this morning. Like, everything's fine, mama. Everything is gonna be just fine. Just go out there, get a few deep breaths, and in like maybe 10-15 minutes, I'll take your blood pressure again, okay? So I have like no level of alarm, you know, and I'm like, you know, I probably am just like holding on to a little bit of like road rage or something after that whole situation went down. So yeah, I'll just do that. I'll just go chillax and get a second reading in a little bit. So I sit down, I text Mitch, I'm like, hey, you know, I'm just like waiting to get another blood pressure reading, whatever. And still like nobody had any level of alarm. So I go, I'm sitting, they call me back again a few minutes later, like 10-15 minutes later, whatever. She takes my reading again, and then she's like, listen, your blood pressures are still high. I'm just gonna wait a minute, and then I'm gonna take it again just for accuracy. Cool, she takes it again. She turns to another, what I perceive to be a like more senior nurse that is behind her. And that nurse, who I guess was like listening to this whole exchange, because we're not in like a exam room at this point. I'm just like kind of sitting out in some like chairs that are outside of, I think, the lab. It's just casual. And that more senior nurse who had been listening was shaking her head, and she turns to my nurse and she says, she's got to go. Which I immediately was like, excuse me? And what she meant by that was, I have to go to the hospital. Like, low key this whole time, like no level of alarm, and now I have to go to the hospital. So, okay. So the nurse, my nurse, says to me, so the doctor, I'm gonna call her Dr. J because I don't want to like put anybody's name out there. The nurse says, Dr. J, if your blood pressure didn't come down, Dr. J is thinking that you need to go and get checked out by the labor and delivery unit, and the hospital was right next door. Needless to say, that whole situation went from 0 to 100 like so fast, like in the blink of an eye. I had never had a blood pressure problem through my whole pregnancy. And it's so weird because in retrospect, they all said that, and the doctor that I got checked out by in the hospital, they all said that the blood pressure was probably not due to the accident, and I am sure the blood pressure was due to just like the work situation and like working right up until the delivery and having to transition my project. And but like looking back, all the symptoms of preeclampsia were there, but I was like never diagnosed with preeclampsia. But in the like last couple weeks of my pregnancy, I put on like 10 pounds, which I suppose that would be normal for some people, but I really hadn't put on, I had put on a very healthy amount of weight during my pregnancy, except for the last 2 weeks, the weight just kept coming and coming. And I went from being not incredibly swollen, like swollen, you know, like my ankles and everything were swollen, but not incredibly so, to like my ankles were like as wide as my calves. And I was getting headaches. And you know, at my appointments, my blood pressure had always been high for me, but not high that is like alarming. Like, so my blood pressure always runs low, like on the like low end of normal, like 80/60, like something like that. So my blood pressure through the whole pregnancy had been running much higher, but not high enough to be of alarm to anybody. So I suppose like it didn't click with everybody, and I wasn't vocal enough about my symptoms that I was diagnosed with preeclampsia. Like, it just didn't happen. Anyway, so I get to the hospital, I get checked out, and I don't know, like, I guess I just thought it would be like a quick, like, check your blood pressure, everything's fine, go home. In fact, I like told Mitch over text message what was going on, and I was like, everything's fine, like I'll be home this afternoon. And he was like alarmed. He's like, do you want me to take off work? And I'm like, no, everything is fine, like I'll be home in a little bit. So this is like, by this time I left the doctor's office, it was probably 9:30 or 10. I was in the labor and delivery unit getting like observed. I thought it would be a quick experience, but I was, by the time Mitch got off work, 3:30, 4 o'clock, I was still there. And at that point I had seen the doctor a couple of times. They had like checked my cervix. Like, I wasn't dilated at all, like locked down tight. I was very effaced, but not dilated. And my cervix had not dropped whatsoever. It was still very high. I hadn't dropped, like I wasn't ready. My body wasn't ready to give birth. Like, there was no baby putting any pressure on my cervix. So the doctor checked me out a few times while I was being like observed or whatever. And he was very like, kind of not, his alert wasn't high. Like, he does this stuff every day, so like his alert wouldn't be high. Like, it is business as usual for him. But he was very like, hey, your blood pressures are just too high. Like, we just kind of need to have you hang out until we can get them down. And I didn't really do anything to get them down. I put my feet up, I relaxed as you can be, like laying in a hospital bed, like being observed. They hooked me up to some machines. They listened to the baby. Like, I was like listening to the baby's heartbeat, and you know, I don't know, I was just like trying to relax. So about like right before Mitch gets there, the doctor comes in. He'd been in several times before, but he came in, it was probably about 3:45, and he says, look, your blood pressures are too high. I can't send you home. The baby needs to come out. It's time. Like, he's gonna make his debut. And you know, I went from like that morning, like, I'm just gonna like, you know, finish up my work, like have a normal like day, to like, okay, we're gonna have a baby like today or like tomorrow, I don't know, like, but it's okay, here we are, we're gonna have a baby. And I think that's how these things happen. They literally go from 0 to 100 like that. So yeah, the induction process begins. Like, I have to emphasize in this, I didn't want to be induced. I wanted to go into labor naturally. Like, you know, I think every woman in their mind has like a birth plan, like how they would like things to go, but you just kind of have to be willing to go with the flow. Cause like, I couldn't be argumentative at that point. Like, blood pressure is too high, it's not healthy for the baby, like it's not safe for the baby, but it's actually like very unsafe for the mother, because if your blood pressure is too high for too long, it can begin to cause organ damage. It can cause stroke. I mean, it really wasn't a position where like I had a like choice in the matter, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like there was no option given for like, you know, just go home and relax and like, you know, hopefully your water breaks soon. Like that wasn't an option. The options were stay here and be induced or stay here and be induced. You know, choice was pretty simple. You know, and you kind of like, as soon as you hear that, you kind of like go into like a panic mode, like, because their situation is right in front of you and you like weren't ready for it. So in terms of like your blood pressure coming down, that's actually, the whole situation has the opposite effect. So Mitch came in the room when he finally got there and I was like, you should sit down. And he was like, he's like on edge. Like, he's like, I am not sitting down. And so I was like, okay, well, remain standing. You're gonna have a baby like today or tomorrow. And I just kind of explained the whole situation to him, and he was like as shocked as I was. And there might be like some other moms watching that are like, oh, business as usual. Like, this is not even bad. And that's correct. It's not bad. We're extremely fortunate that we caught it in time, that it wasn't bad. Like, if you are spiritual at all, I think you'll like get on board with this concept that I'm about to throw out. But like, everything happens for a reason. I truly believe that like God moved my body to get up that morning and say to my husband, let's go to work together. Like, let me take you into the city. I truly believe that God had that taxi driver on his phone, not paying attention, so that he would rear end us. As like sadistic as that sounds, the baby needed to come. Like, my health was in jeopardy, his health was in jeopardy, and God works in very mysterious ways. But like, the bottom line is that this cycle of events that needed to happen to get me to be examined that day, to get like the process of induction started, it all happened for a reason, and that was to preserve the health of my baby, and so, and my health as well. So I think like, you just got to go with the flow sometimes, you know. You just have to like trust the process and have faith that like, you know, God really is in control. Anyway, back to the induction story. Like, I'm not going to spend too much time because it's like, induction is just like not, it's not like a fun process. So we tried, I'm gonna like probably butcher this, but I think they tried, the first thing was called Cervidil. They put Cervidil up, like it's like a string kind of thing. They put it up, they tuck it behind the cervix, and that stays in like overnight, I think. So I'm just gonna briefly mention, like, for the Cervidil, not to scare anyone, but it's like real. You can't use any like lubricant. So the doctor, whoever's inserting it, has a gloved hand on, and they can't use any lubricant because that makes the like hormone that's in the Cervidil, which I think is with oxytocin, is what like causes contractions. It makes the hormone like less effective. So hands down, like the worst part of this whole experience was a unlubricated gloved hand going into the birth canal to place the Cervidil. Okay, that was brutal. Okay. Anyway, first round of Cervidil didn't work. Then we did, what did we do? We did a drip. What's the stuff called? They did a drip that it had something in it. I'll put the name of what they did on the screen because it's literally like so common. And why can't I think of it? Anyway, I'll put the name of it on the screen. So we did that, drip through an IV after. So obviously the Cervidil didn't work. The next thing, the IV drip, didn't work. That went on for like 12 hours, and they increased the intensity, like I think actually beyond what the maximum was. I was having 0 contractions, like it wasn't happening. So then we tried the Cervidil again, then we tried Cytotec. We tried Cytotec in what's called a buckle. They put it like in your cheek, And then we tried Cytotec again, inserted vaginally. And this went on from basically Tuesday afternoon through speed up to Thursday morning here. So that's like what, 36 hours just of straight nonstop induction, like attempts. I'm tired. I'm not sleeping well. I'm, you know, obviously you don't sleep well in the hospital. I'm hooked up to all these machines that are like going off if like one little thing, like if your blood pressure cuff loosens, an alarm goes off. If your little finger oxygen thing loosens a little bit accidentally, this alarm goes off. So I'm hooked up to all these like beeping things. I've got straps around my belly. I got cords coming out of me. I'm like, these alarms are going off. I'm not sleeping. I'm tired. I got objects inserted into my birth canal. I got all this stuff going on. And I'm stressed, right? Blood pressure is still not coming down. In fact, the opposite effect is taking place. Like my blood pressure is slowly like creeping up. So it gets to be Thursday morning and the doctor comes in, and it's the same doctor who examined me for the observation on Tuesday. He's back, which is like cool because I like him. But the doctors, they rotate on shift. So I had seen several other doctors, and now we're back to the original doctor who observed me. And he's like, wow, you're still here. That's no good. So he's like, listen, I'm going to try this thing called a Foley bulb, I think. And it's basically like, I don't know how to describe it. If there's medical professionals, I apologize for like how brutal this is, but here's your cervix locked down tight, okay? And here's a Foley bulb, and you have to insert it through your cervix. And then imagine there's a balloon on the end of this that slowly inflates with water and like opens your cervix a little bit, okay? So the problem with that is that if you're not dilated at all, that is like, that's a quite painful thing to do. And I actually have a video on my IUD insertion where I talk about just how painful of a process it is to traverse a closed cervix with an object. It's incredibly painful, and interestingly, it's the same doctor that's trying to insert this thing to put the Foley bulb in that inserted the IUD, which just is like, you know, crazy world, small world. Anyway, so he does that attempt. It's not successful. He can't even get the tool in far enough to even begin inflating the Foley bulb. It's not happening. So that was an incredibly painful thing to experience. So he's like, listen, we're gonna do another round of, I think, this Cytotec vaginally, and if that doesn't work, we're gonna have to, like, the baby needs to come out. It's getting to be paramount that this baby comes out. He's like, he wouldn't say it's an emergency, but he's like, here's your choices. We can continue this, and your blood pressure can continue to rise, or you can consider a C-section. He's like, I know you're not interested in a C-section, but that's like where we're at. Yeah. So we try the Cytotec again during the day. Bear in mind, I'm not having any contractions during this whole time. My cervix is not opening whatsoever. I'm not dilating. So that was Thursday morning. Fast forward, Thursday afternoon, the Cytotec has been in all day, no contractions. He tries the Foley bulb one more time, just as a last ditch effort, and it is just about the same experience, just like that. And I don't know, I don't want to say he throws in the towel. We all kind of threw in the towel. Like, the baby needed to come out. It wasn't like a dire emergency, like right now, oh my God, if the baby doesn't come out, you know, we're just gonna be like terrible complications. It wasn't like that. It was just, we were all like kind of exhausted. I was so exhausted. And the thing is that that point, if labor would have begun, I don't know, I wouldn't have had any like energy to like go through with it. So I was like really defeated at that point. I had kind of like resolved to the fact that like this whole experience like was not going to be anything like I had hoped it would be. You know, so as much as I wanted to like maintain my like pride of like giving birth naturally, the there was like several things at stake, you know, my health, like the baby's health. I was so exhausted. I wasn't going home. It just didn't seem like there was like really any other option. So when he gave us the option for a C-section, we talked about it for 20-30 minutes, and he came back and we agreed, like, okay, you know, because it was an option still at that point, but it really wasn't an option. And you know, at the end of the day, like, as much as I like wanted to be able to say like I did this like naturally, like, you know, I don't know, just priorities changed in the 13th hour, you know, and priority shifted from me being prideful to the health, my health and the baby's health. So anyway, literally, like, I don't know, I would say that was like 4 o'clock. We were like, yeah, we're gonna have a C-section. And we started getting prepped for that immediately. The doctor was delayed a little bit in the OR dealing with like an emergency situation, but Calvin was born at 5:45. And I just can't tell you, like, you know, you get all prepped up, you like have to wipe your whole body down with these like antibacterial things. And also, because I think she might watch this, shout out to I had like a lot of amazing nurses at Centauro where I gave birth, but shout out to this one particular nurse. Her name is Carrie Ann, and she just like made the whole experience good. Like, despite everything that was like happening, she just like had such a positive demeanor and was just so kind and wonderful. And like, you know, if you're watching, Carrie Ann, like, shout out, like, God bless you. You made the experience what could have been like, you know, really like just you like made it, like, I still look back on my whole birth experience as being wonderful. And I you know, I attribute that to like obviously the fact that I had a child, but to the fact that you were part of it. So thank you. Anyway, from the time I got all like wiped off with the, you know, wipes and like walked back to the OR where the C-section happened, it was like so fast. And I remember sitting on the table, and they did I think they're called the spinal block when you do a C-section, and they like inserted the catheter and then the thing with the stuff, and you know, you have to like lay down really fast, and you have to go back there by yourself, and there's this whole room full of people you've never met, and it's like crazy. And I was so nervous but like so excited at the same time. And the crazy thing is, like, and again, I'll touch on this in my like pregnancy part of the story, but I had struggled with like the idea of becoming a mother. I was like really not interested in the whole like mother parent situation, and I remember, like, you know, despite the fact that this ultimately, like, I'm excited talking about it, like in that moment there was a struggle. Like, I remember leaving the room that I was in and saying to my husband, like, I'm not interested in this. And he was like, what, a C-section? And I was like, no, like, being a mom, like having a baby, like, I'm like not interested in this. Like, right up until the moment that I gave birth, I was like not emotionally, mentally interested in it, like, at all. We get to the OR. They put the stuff in me. I lay down. Pretty soon Mitch comes in. It's quite clear that he's been given instructions to distract me. There's lots of like feelings and noises, and I can feel them. Like, I'm totally numb. It's the craziest feeling. I can feel them put the catheter in. I can feel like the incision. It's not like painful, but I can like feel it. And then there's like all sorts of like wiggling and tugging and pressure. And then there's a baby. And everybody's like in the room, everybody's talking about this baby, and I can't see it because the sheet, and there's all these like suctiony noises and like just all that's going on. But there's a baby, and they're like, I remember the first thing the nurse said was, wow, you can tell that's your kid. Look at those huge lips. So Mitch, on Mitch's phone, the nurse, Carrie Ann, she took some amazing photos of Calvin like entering the world. It was quite quite an experience. The moment they get him all cleaned off, they laid him on my chest, and I'll insert a picture of the moment that I met my son. Right in that moment, my entire world changed. Something chemically changed in me the moment they placed him on my chest. I became a mother. Like, everything about my entire world changed. Like, I can't emphasize, because you don't know what you don't know, but chemically there is a change that occurs right in that moment. It's like the baby leaves the body, the placenta and all that, like, it's pulled out, and your brain releases like some type of chemical, and you are just flooded with this vulnerability and love. And I tell people, like, I was not interested in being a mother at all right up until the moment that they placed that child on my chest. And then he was the only person in the world. He was the absolute only thing that mattered in the whole world. So unfortunately, the story doesn't end there. You know, I wish I could tell you that it was just like wonderful and I just spent time with my son and everything was beautiful from that point. But so often with C-section babies, they don't get that like squeeze that normal babies that go through a vaginal delivery, that go through the birth canal, they don't get that squeeze that is like necessary to squeeze all that like fluid out of their lungs and so forth. So I think it is called, and I'll insert the correct name of this on the screen, I think it's called transient tachycardia or something like that. But essentially he had fluid in his lungs and he was born, and you know, although they gave him to me to hold and so forth, and then they quickly whisked him away to do all the like necessary medical things they do to newborns, what I was not made aware of until I was in the recovery room was that he wasn't breathing. You know, and this type of thing, it's transient. It's called transient for a reason. It's quite common. It does pass. But like in that moment, it's pretty scary. Like the kid wouldn't breathe and they couldn't get him to breathe. And he had fluid in his lungs and he sounded like he was choking. So he spent his first few hours after he was born in the NICU, hooked up to a lot of machines. But because I was like basically stoned on, you know, painkillers and everything else that's going on, like I didn't understand the gravity of the situation. They sent a NICU nurse back to talk to me in the recovery room, and I remember her face when she was like telling me like what was going on with my son. I remember her face, and her face, without saying it, her expression told me, you're not really reacting to this. Your reaction is not really appropriate for the gravity of the situation. Because I was very like just stoned, you know, like everything will be fine. Like, you know, thanks so much for like taking care of my kid. Like, I'm sure everything will be fine. Like, you guys are taking good care of him. Because I was just like on cloud 9 and I was like filled up with all these painkillers. Yeah, I like didn't get it. So get back to the like room, like my family's there, and later that evening, it was probably like 11 o'clock, they wheel Calvin in finally. And I don't know, it's just like, you know, the drugs that are like in your system, like that moment is a blur. The whole like night, overnight is a blur. The next day, my dog is barking. The next day was a Friday, and even though Calvin was in the room with us, he was like still like kind of choking on fluid. He was like having a hard time with breathing and everything else. So the NICU folks actually came and got him again, and from Friday until Monday he spent in the NICU. And I'm really like long on time here, so I don't really want to like get too much into this, but The time that my son spent in the NICU, I was helpless to the situation. I was just a bystander, and like all these like maternal things that I wanted to do, like snuggle him and hold him and nurse him, I couldn't do. The most emotionally difficult thing I have ever experienced in my life was watching my son hooked up to all these machines and trying to nurse him, and he was choking on this fluid that was trying to come out of his lungs. And the nurses were wonderful. They kept saying, like, you know, this is really not that serious, and it will pass. But in that moment, so filled with hormones, like, it was like the most difficult thing I have ever experienced. But, you know, I cried. I like had my sob fest. I got it out of my system. I felt sorry for myself. And then I decided I'm gonna like man up. I'm gonna woman up. I'm going to go there. I'm gonna go to the NICU. It was so easy to stay away because it was so hard. But I just decided I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna spend the whole time in the NICU with my son. I'm gonna hold him. I'm gonna do skin to skin. I'm gonna rock him. Like, I'm gonna heal him, right? With my body. Like, that's what he needs. Like, he needs to like feel my heartbeat and like feel the warmth of my skin. Like, he needs that. And that's what I did. I would say Friday night, late Friday night, overnight, all through Monday when he got discharged, I went to the NICU. I went in a 3-hour window and I would nurse him for a long time, like 40 minutes. And I didn't even have milk coming in yet. It was just colostrum, but regardless, I nursed him because that's what he needed, and that's like what was healthy, and that was gonna help us bond. And then after I nursed him, I just held him, like skin on skin. You know, they close the little curtain in the NICU so you can like have your like time. And I just held him and let him sleep on my chest for probably another hour to hour and a half. And then I would put him down and let the hospital staff like hook him, you know, I mean, he was hooked up to all the stuff during that time, but they'd like, you know, change him, and like he was on glucose at that time to maintain his like blood sugar, and I'd let them like run their tests and do what they needed to do, and I would go back to the room, find something to eat, pump, and then try and get some sleep. And that like 3-hour cycle of events went on from late Friday night to Monday morning when they sent me home. And that was it. Like, it's such a blur. It is such a blur. But I don't know. I just like decided like I gotta like step up. Like, I can't sit and feel sorry for myself. It could be so much worse. Like, God is so good, and we're so thankful that this is the only thing that we're having to deal with, because so many parents deal with so much worse. And I don't know, you know, God gave me the strength to like be the mother that he needed for those few days. And then finally on Monday morning, the doctor made his rounds and gave him the all clear, gave him the go ahead to go home. And so begins my journey of motherhood from that point forward. So yeah, I certainly didn't like want to share this story to scare anybody. This was kind of like a long drawn out birth story, and I've tried to like retell the story to like people in my life in like a more concise way, but I think telling it concisely is like not as meaningful as like the whole drawn out story of it. So I don't know, you know, if you don't believe in God, like, you know, I'll just like leave that where it is. But If you do, like, I feel like this is my, like, testimony. Like, this is my witness. Like, he was, like, faithful to us when we needed him to be. He, like, set this whole series of events into play so that I could meet my son, and that my health wasn't jeopardized, and that Calvin's health wasn't jeopardized. He gave me the strength where I needed it to be the mother that Calvin needed in our time, in his time of need. I just could not be more thankful. God is good, and Calvin is the greatest blessing I have ever received in my life, which is a complete 180 from the tune I was singing during pregnancy and when I first found out I was pregnant. I mean, I could have not been less interested in motherhood, and now I feel like I was born for this. I was made for this, and it is the most precious and beautiful and wonderful thing I have ever done, and I am so thankful. So I will leave this story here. I am going to do a part 2 to this, to talk about my pregnancy journey and my peripartum depression. So when I get that made and posted, I will leave it in the description box down below so you can check out part 2. But once again, thank you so much for watching. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. It's, you know, it's so cathartic and wonderful to be able to, like, express this birth story, and I'm sure that I'll watch this, you know, years from now and just, like, relive all these beautiful moments that I'm sharing today. So thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that subscribe button. Like I said, my goal is to make it to 1,000 subscribers in 2019, and your support and help is so appreciated in that goal. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.